Hello, if you've not seen my videos before, my name's Kathryn. I blog over at liquidgrain.co.uk and I also YouTube here. So you might know that I love reading, but it has been absolutely ages since I've sat down and filmed a book video, mainly because the book that I said I was going to talk about is this one. It's Wild by Cheryl Strayed, and I didn't really like it. I read this way back last June when I was in the Camargue in the south of France with my mum, and yeah, I didn't love it. So I just haven't ever really sat down and made a video about it because I haven't liked it that much. But I have got my notes I took in my bullet journal, and I want to talk about other books that I've been reading, but the logic in me won't let me move on to other ones until I talk about the one that I said I was going to talk about. So I thought I would quickly talk about the book and kind of just tell you about why I didn't really like it so much, and then introduce the next book that I'm going to talk about in my next video. This is a review and it will include some spoilers, but hopefully you'll be able to appreciate what I'm saying, even if you maybe disagree with it. And if you do disagree with me or agree with me, I'd love to hear about your opinion on the book down below, because I feel like a lot of people love this book and a lot of people love the movie as well. To give you some background, the book is called Wild. It's written by Cheryl Strayed. That isn't her real name. She changed it, which she describes in the book. And it talks about Cheryl's journey through the Pacific Crest Trail, as she is the first woman to ever do it solo. So this was published in 2012 and set in 1995. It's a very personal book, and I think that if you maybe can emphasize or have experienced the similar situations and scenarios in the book, it's going to be one that it maybe speaks to you, and that will give you a connection with the book. But for me, I just didn't get that. I thought that it was sometimes overly emotional. You know, I like a good book where I can cry, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it was written out almost as a therapy for the author, rather than sometimes serving a purpose, which is tricky because it obviously is a kind of it's got this kind of biographical nature to it, which is tricky, I think, when it's almost treated as a fiction book as well. The book was later turned into a film, and I was going to try and be a well-rounded reviewer and watch the film and then compare it, but I just couldn't bring myself to it. So I'm afraid I can't do that and be a good reviewer. I'm going to read you the blurb as well. At 26, Cheryl Strayed thought she had lost everything. In the wake of her mother's rapid death from cancer, her family drifted apart and her marriage crumbled. With nothing left to lose, she made the most impulsive decision of her life: to walk the 1,100 miles of the west coast of America, and to do it alone. She had no experience of long-distance hiking, and the journey was nothing more than a line on a map, but it held a promise of piercing together a life that lay shattered at her feet. And, you know, I was really excited to learn more about the actual walk itself, and I wish there was kind of more of that, rather than the kind of repeated flashbacks and the kind of, you know, the backstory side of it. I think I would have quite liked it to go in hard and talk about the different parts of the trail, and which she did to some degree, but I would like to know about the different environments, because there's such differences, and during the whole trail, it's such a long trail going through so many different environments and things like that. It would have been great to get that painted a little bit better. I think, building on what I'd said before about the emotional side of it not really connecting with me, I didn't like the start of it at all. It took me a long time to get into it. Her backstory is quite, I found it quite unengaging, and I actually preferred her time on the trail far more. I would say if you're looking for a quick read, it's an easy read. It's a little bit different, especially if you're wanting a female protagonist, and it is interesting. You do read it and think that, yeah, I could go walk 1,100 miles and be fine, so that's quite nice. What I did really like about it was I really loved her interactions with the other hikers. I thought they were what saved the book. Those sort of snippets where we saw how Cheryl interacted with other people and also how they interacted with her, although I think maybe that was, there was an element of egotism and flattery in how that perhaps was written, maybe not, but all of these men seem to just instantly fall in love with Cheryl, which I'm sure they did to some degree. On a similar note, I think Cheryl wrote the intimate scenes really well. I think that's a real strength of hers. I think they were the scenes that had flow. They were just really well written, and I think that was probably the highest standard of writing throughout the book, were the intimate scenes, and I think that maybe shows maybe where her interests lie, which is quite interesting, because sometimes those scenes might be really cheesy or forced or just unbelievable, but I think they flowed really well and they fit in the story well. They weren't gratuitous, they were just really good scenes and well written intimate scenes. And for me, that's almost an opposite of the rest of the book, and especially the flashback and the emotional side of it. Those bits I think were borderline cheesy, and I think there is obviously a place in that, and if that was her life, you know, who am I to say anything about it? But it would have been nice to have the flow that you see in the intimate scenes, and also just in the dialogue and the interactions between the different hikers, to see that for the rest of the book, and particularly when the discussions about her marriage and her wider family would be really, really good to see. So a very mixed review from me, as you can probably tell. I'd love to hear what you thought about it, and what you thought about those three aspects, whether the interactions between hikers, the intimate scenes, and the emotional backstory. Do you think they all worked? Were some of them stronger than the other? Were some maybe a little bit weaker? And I would love to hear your overall impression of the book as well. And the movie. If you've watched the movie, let me know if you think it's worth it, and especially if these were my kind of mixed thoughts about the book itself. On to what I'm going to talk about in my next video on books, and that is The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. And I'm going to read you the blurb quickly. On a beautifully restored barge in the Seine, Jean Perdue runs a bookshop, or rather a literary apothecary, for this bookseller possesses a rare gift of sensing which books will soothe the troubled souls of his customers. The only person he is unable to cure, it seems, is himself. But when an enigmatic new neighbour moves into his eccentric apartment building on Rue Montagnard, Jean is inspired to unlock his heart, unmoor the floating bookshop, and set off for Provence in search of the past and his beloved. So it sounds good, but please be ready for my terrible French pronunciations in the next video. It also notes that over 500,000 copies were sold, and it is by Nina George. Looking forward to talking about this next time. So please leave your thoughts on Wild down below, and I'll be back soon to talk about The Little Paris Bookshop. Bye!